Welcome everybody to our Wild Card Wednesday. We are so glad that you have joined us, and today's a special day. I have a new friend. We've talked and communicated and shared some thoughts over the years, but actually get to sit down in person and talk. So, welcome, David Joannes of Within Reach Global. We're so glad that you're here with us today.
Man, it's such an awesome pleasure, and I'm just so excited we're finally able to do this.
Yes. We've talked about ministry, we've talked about books, we've talked about just what God has done, and talked about doing an interview and sharing. And so we're so glad. And our Wild Card Wednesday is exactly a wild card. You never know who's going to show up here, what we've got. And so for those of you joining the network, we're grateful that you're here today and excited about this chat. So I know you have a special heart for unreached people groups. And that's what Within Reach Global is all about. But it didn't start that way initially, right? You had lived in the Philippines. Give us a little bit about your story and what Within Reach Global is doing now.
Yeah, well, actually, it always has been for me, unreached people groups. I don't know, it's really weird. God really grabbed a hold of my heart. I was born and raised in a Christian family in Prescott, Arizona. I was, as my mom told me later, I was 3 years old, 1981, looking at a little National Geographic magazine, and came across this photo of this man walking through the rice terraces in China, I think. And at 3 years old, I looked at my mom and said, I want to bring bread to the people of China. And so I don't know why I said that as a little kid. But fast forward 12 years later, I went on my first mission trip to Asia with Teen Mania Ministries. Shout out to Ron Luce. And I was smuggling Bibles from Hong Kong into China, as well as doing drama and other things. And I remember we had these code words for our Bible smuggling because it was contraband literature in China, still is. And we had these special code words, all the tracts that we were carrying, and the girls would slide them on the inside pockets of their skirts and would load up backpacks. We called those crumbs, and the Bibles we called bread. And the very first time I passed from Hong Kong into Shenzhen, the border city of China there, I was reminded by the Holy Spirit, said, David, you're bringing bread to the people of China. And it was a powerful connection point. From there, I moved to China in 1998. And was there for 15 years. My wife is from the Philippines. I met her on that trip, actually, and chased her for 7 years, wore her down. Finally, she said yes after 7 years. And so we were in China for 15 years, still have an ongoing ministry there, and now based in Thailand for almost 10 years, seeing God do great things among unreached people groups. And yeah, that's just always been the heartbeat and passion of our ministry that we started with Reach Global, because I really feel that a lack of gospel access is the greatest injustice known to humankind. And from it stem all other injustices that we see in the world, from trafficking and hunger and poverty, etc. All these things stem from a lack of gospel access, and not just the anemic gospel, but a robust gospel. So if we could do anything in our lives, set something in motion, is to give gospel access to unreached people groups.
And I do believe that your latest book talks about that, the gospel access and getting it to all, and why. It's called Gospel Privilege. Tell us a little bit about that really quick at the beginning here.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks for all these shameless plugs, man. I'm glad I don't have to do them. The recent book that I wrote is my third, Gospel Privilege. It's kind of a play on words because there's a pejorative meaning behind the word privilege. Obviously, we know that, male and white and socioeconomic and all the others. But even the gospel has some derogative meanings in certain sectors of culture. But I was trying to play on these words to show that there is a positive aspect to the privilege we have of gospel access. Access changes everything. And, drive down the corner in any city in America or Philippines, where I just came from, for that matter, and you'll see a church on every corner. We have such great access. That doesn't mean we have gospel privilege, but we have a great ability to access that privilege of knowing Christ and making him known. And so with that comes responsibility, the joy of bringing the mandate Jesus gave us to the nations. So Gospel Privilege was really fun to write. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I've just started it. And
Oh,
so
did you?
I've enjoyed it. Yes. So
Wow,
looking forward to,
awesome.
and maybe our next call, we'll talk about that.
Cool, great. I'm honored. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Here to there, we focus on helping churches create their strategic plans from here, their local, to their global. And a lot of people look at their global as the missionaries, their support, but also the unreached people groups. And I know you have a heart for that. And why I say, why are they becoming so popular? Why are the unreached people groups kind of moving into center focus for the church and mission focus right now?
Yeah, that's a great question and an interesting one because sometimes in my experience they're not. I'm glad you're experiencing that they are coming into focal point of the church. I wonder sometimes if the church at large is experiencing this, with the 2018 March Barna report that 51% of churchgoers don't know what the Great Commission is. I think we have lost sight of the great mandate Jesus gave us. It's become a sideline thing of going to church. But for those who are learning about and bringing the conversation about unreached people groups, I like the word gospel deprived because we've been using the word unreached for so long. June last month, Rick Warren stepped down as the lead pastor for Saddleback Church, moved into the role of finishing the task executive director. And they have this goal of by 2033, 2000 years after the Great Commission was given, Jesus gave us, Matthew 28, to see the world reached. And this has been the byword, the mantra of, say, the student volunteer movement of the 1890s, the evangelization of the world in this generation. I'm so happy to see people start talking about the unreached because we have such a great imbalance of global missions. I just recently gave a couple messages in the Philippines about the global imbalance of world missions, just finding that 1 in 300 missionaries goes to the unreached. Majority of monies given to missions do not go to the unreached, but already evangelized or Christianized areas, at least places with gospel access. So we need to continue this conversation, whether you use the word unreached people group or unengaged people group or gospel deprived. I believe the heart of God really beats for that none should perish, but every single individual would have an opportunity in their lifetime to hear the gospel. I mean, I live here in Thailand, and there's one missionary statistically saying, you could go to travelingteam.org/stats to find these. There's one missionary for every 260,000 Buddhist people in my context here. And so these people have to be given the opportunity 2,000 years after Jesus gave us a mandate. Perhaps there's some sort of new awakening that God is reminding us that I love the whole world. And the mandate is to take it, yes, from here to there, from Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth.
Yeah, I agree. Right. We're not there yet, but the church is starting to wake up that there are mass groups of people who haven't had the privilege, the opportunity to hear. And like you're saying, the majority of people are going to reached or saturated areas. But we are starting to see people recognize that there are unreached. People are starting to learn what that is. It's kind of becoming the hot topic word, but I don't know if it's the hot topic thing yet of actually doing it and getting it done. Here to There has a couple of partners who have just recently focused on hiring or bringing in missionaries specifically for those unreached groups. And we're really excited to see people making that happen. Right. And like you're saying, the majority of our resources, the majority of our time are going to places that already have access. Not that they're not important and those people Absolutely. Still don't need the gospel, but like you're saying, it's unbalanced and we're not even considering the unreached, the underprivileged, the marginalized, whatever it is that they need a chance and that we're commanded to go to them as well. And
yeah.
so
Yeah, well, I mean, just to follow off that thought, you're right. That I think that the big thing is that this nameless, faceless conglomerate of people, and we don't understand lostness, because souls matter in Nebraska or Nepal, or they matter everywhere. Souls matter to God. They should matter to us. They bear the imago Dei, the imprint of the image of God. But when mass swaths of populations have not even had one chance to hear the gospel. I walked into so many villages in China. One time I asked this guy in China, 你们这儿有没有听说过耶稣基督? Have you ever heard of Jesus Christ here? And he said, 那是不是一种香皂的名牌? Is that a brand of a soap? He said, as if I was some sort of international businessman trying to monopolize the soap industry in his village. I mean, he had no concept of what a Jesus was. And that's just not fair. I resonate with David Platt's statement. When will the idea, the concept of unreached people groups become intolerable to us? When we begin to understand lostness and God's passion for the souls of men and women, then our heart triggers with his love for the lost and unreached.
I remember my first conversation similar to that in China, and asking someone, had they heard of Jesus? And they said, yes, I heard it on an American movie, and it was a swear word. When they described it, it was a swear word. And I just went, that is not how we want to get the gospel out in that way. And I think that was one of the first times I really remember being in a context where people had no clue. Most of the places I had served or had the opportunity in the Philippines and other places had a base of who Jesus was. They didn't worship him, or it wasn't a full Christianity in those countries, but they still had a baseline. Sure. And China was a real shocker to my soul that there are huge conglomerates of people who have no clue, who have no concept. Okay, so when we work with churches and when we talk to them about missions, we find out that many of them have a heart for missions. They love it, right? It's part of what they talk about, but yet we found that they don't have a plan for it. They don't have a strategy, and that becomes so important, because without a strategy, we continue to go back to the things that are easy or readily accessible, and things that we already know how to do, and we tend to neglect the things that are unknown, the things that are going to be a struggle and a challenge for us. And so as God's kind of moved you along in missions from serving, and now you're leading an organization with staff members and missionaries who are going into some of these places, where does strategy play in reaching the unreached?
Absolutely. I'm glad you are an organization here to there focused on that strategy, because I mean, we have got to not, if you do the things you've always done, you're going to get the same results over and over. And the results that we've got are dismal in the 1040 window. I mean, take, for example, Thailand, 194 years, 1828, the first Protestant missionaries, till now, we have 0.77% Christian. We went from 194 years ago, and almost 200 years went to 0.77%, less than 1%. So if we don't rethink, how do we cross cultures? How do we express the gospel contextually? How do we send people so that they thrive on the mission field rather than just survive? Because we know missionary attrition is a real thing. People come for a stint, 2, 3, maybe 4 years. And they think, wow, man, 4 years, you're like a career missionary now. and in the end, the strategies even have to include empowerment of indigenous leaders and missionaries who really live and breathe and die the language and culture. And they're the only ones who are really going to be able to bring longevity in making disciples and planting churches. So I think churches need to really pause and say, do you want to support like 50 missionaries and make an ankle deep, and I mean, a mile wide and ankle deep impact? Or do you want to shift strategies and shift finances and giving and truly maybe even adopt a region. I think there's a lot of adoption of unreached people groups and unengaged tribes. What I'm beginning to see now is this new strategy is regions, because they comprise multiple ethnic people groups who don't have access to the gospel. And within that area, you can actually multiply your ministry and the impact of the gospel among these people. So we've got to be able to latch on to great strategies that make impact, spirit-led, empowered, robust gospel as efforts among unreached people groups. And I'm going to point people to you guys because I think you guys have some strategies and systems in place that people could really utilize.
And thank you for that plug. We want to see the church, Acts 1:8, both locally, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost, to there, here to there, and taking the responsibility and the expectations that everyone is a part of the Great Commission. Everyone is responsible to go and to share.